Porter Jr. again. Kevin Porter Jr. with his 9th three-pointer of the game.
Yo guys, what's going on? Today we're going to be talking about why I think Kevin Porter Jr. from the Houston Rockets will win the Most Improved Player award in the 2022 season. Now let's be honest, it's really hard to predict who can win this award before the season starts because it's really hard to predict who's going to have a really good year after playing not that great. That being said, I'm not the only one that thinks Kevin Porter Jr. has a real shot to win this award. Vegas has KPJ with the 4th best odds to win this award, only behind SGA from OKC, Zion, Michael Porter Jr., and right ahead of Zach LaVine. His odds fall at plus 900, while SGA and Zion are tied for plus 700. Right behind them is Michael Porter at plus 750, and right behind Kevin Porter Jr. is Zach LaVine at plus 1200. According to this, the competition is pretty stiff, but I really don't think so. Out of these 5 candidates, I really think Kevin Porter Jr. has the best chance, and we'll get into that. But on a surface level, it's really easy to see that he is super talented. Both with the ball and off the ball, he can not only shoot the 3, but he can take players off the dribble, take advantage of mismatches, and rack up assists like none other than the former Houston Rocket James Harden. It's so poetic that once James Harden leaves, we get a player that plays very similar to his playstyle. The more he can channel into his inner James Harden, the higher his chances will be to win this award. Don't get me wrong, SGA, Zion, Michael Porter Jr., and Zach LaVine are all really great players. But that being said, that's not what it takes to win this award. What it takes is a year-to-year considerable improvement. I mean, let's just look at Julius Randle for a second. In his first season with New York, Julius Randle averaged 20 points per game, 10 rebounds a game, 3 assists per game, but only on 28% shooting from 3 and 46% shooting overall. In the very next season with the New York Knicks, he averaged 24 points per game, 6 assists per game, 10 rebounds per game, while shooting 42% from the 3-point line and 46% overall from the field. Not only that, but he improved the amount of free throws he took and the percentage of his free throw shooting. This led to him winning the Most Improved Player award. That's a drastic improvement and one that allowed him to just win it outright. This shows that this is the type of improvement we're looking for the next Most Improved Player winner. With that being said, all of these players are great, but outside of KPJ, I don't think any of these players can really make that jump that Julius Randle made. Starting off with SGA, he averaged 24 points per game on 5 rebounds, 6 assists, but most importantly, he shot 51% from the field, shot 42% from 3, and shot 80% from the line. Those shooting splits are of players who have reached their peak in their career. Now, I'm not saying SGA has reached his peak, but to make a drastic improvement like Julius Randle would have made, he would have to reach all-star status. And let's be honest, with Curry, Dame, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, and Luka in the Western Conference, SGA is far from getting into the all-star game. Moving on to Zion Williamson, who is tied with SGA with the biggest odds to win the award, he averaged 27 points per game, 7 rebounds a game, 4 assists per game on 62% shooting from the field, 30% shooting from 3, and 70% shooting from the free throw line. Let's be honest, Zion Williamson had a monster year last year, but to expect even more, especially a jump like Julius Randle made to win the award, is not something I don't think he's going to be able to do next year. For him to take that jump is going to put him into the MVP conversation, probably into the scoring title conversation, and I just don't see that happening, especially with the moves that they made this offseason. Zion, I think, will replicate what he did last season, which is still really good. He was a perennial all-star, and truth be told, he probably should have won Most Improved Player last year, but to expect that from him again is a bit too much. In my opinion, the guy who has the best shot to beat Kevin Porter Jr. is Michael Porter Jr. With the Nuggets last year, he averaged 19 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 1 assist per game on 45% shooting from 3, which is ridiculous, 54% shooting from the field, which is also really good. He probably had one of the most efficient years in NBA history since he shot 45% from 3 while taking 6 threes a game. That being said, it's reasonable to assume that he has a good chance to win the award because with Jamal Murray out with the ACL injury, a lot of people predict Michael Porter Jr.'s volume will increase. That being said, with his volume increasing, I don't think his percentages will stay linear. In fact, I think they'll drop and they'll prevent Michael Porter Jr. from accumulating the stats everyone thinks he will with Jamal Murray out. Additionally, he's playing alongside the reigning MVP, the one player who's going to have the most touches on the court, the one player who's going to command the highest usage rate, and the one player he's going to have to play off of for team success. But I still think he was going to have a phenomenal year and definitely give Kevin Porter a run for his money. Now let's talk about our main guy, Kevin Porter Jr. He already showed it on the NBA stage when he dropped 50 points and 11 assists against the NBA champion. Last year, Kevin Porter Jr., he averaged 17 points per game, 6 assists per game, 4 rebounds per game on 31% shooting and 43% from the field. However, when John Wall was out, he averaged 19 points per game, 7.5 assists per game, and 4.2 rebounds per game. Now, I don't think John Wall is going to be out for the entire season like he was in those last 16 games, but I do think that Kevin Porter Jr. will not be sharing the court with John Wall as much as we think, and B, John Wall will still not play back-to-backs, and allowing Kevin Porter Jr. to live up to his potential as a ball handler. Compared to the last 16 games last year when we were tanking, the players around Kevin Porter Jr. are going to be better and more competitively engaged. More importantly, it seems Kevin Porter Jr. is working his ass off this summer. We saw him at the Pro-Ams in Chicago playing with DeJounte Murray, and then we also saw him training with J. Cole. Although there haven't been any more posts other than that, it is safe to say Kevin Porter Jr. is really putting in the work. But the reason I think Kevin Porter Jr. is going to win Most Improved Player is because, in my opinion, he is the only player on this list that has the ability to make that big jump from one year to the next. I mentioned his shooting splits of 31% from 3 and 43% from the field, but he only shot 73% from the free throw line. A player of Kevin Porter Jr.'s caliber and with the sweet stroke that he does have, I'd expect all of his percentages to go up while his volume increases as well. If anything, that Milwaukee game shows us how good KPJ can be, and I think next year he's going to take a step towards that potential. That step is going to be massive and is going to show on the stat sheet. The work that Kevin Porter Jr. has put in this last offseason is really going to allow him to perform game in, game out of a normal 82 game season that we haven't had for the last couple of years. Just like in that Milwaukee game, when he dropped 50 points and 11 assists, I think KPJ is going to be putting defenders on skates, splashing threes, and dishing out assists on his way to becoming the 2022 Most Improved Player of the Year. Who do you think is going to win Most Improved Player of the Year? Do you think it's going to be Kevin Porter Jr., Zion, SGA, Michael Porter Jr., or do you think it's someone that's not even listed on the Vegas odds? Let me know in the comments below. Other than that, please like the video, subscribe, and watch any of these two videos if they interest you.